Hello there, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel, and first time you're passing through, you're welcome to subscribe, like and share. I tend to kind of, where the media kind of underreports or excludes certain information, I tend to bring it to the forefront. Hence the reason this is called Blackbright, because I bring what's left in the dark out into the light. So I was just wondering, recently, over the last couple of days, Madeleine Mccann has appeared on our television screens again. 13 years after her death, we are still trying to find out where she went, what happened to her, and now all of a sudden they have a suspect, a German suspect. So, you kind of wonder about the timing of these things and whether or not it's used to diffuse what's going on in America and the UK, because I think the media wants to galvanize, they want to get back their white audience. And the white audience was leaning towards supporting black people with the protests. So they know that a white person is more likely to be empathetic with their fellow white people, or a white child, a beautiful white innocent child, than they are by what is perceived as being less desirable black people who are on a rampage, who look as though they are not abiding by the law. So who is the majority going to have an affinity with? Are they going to have an affinity with Madeleine Mccann, or are they going to have an affinity with the rebel rousers, or what are perceived as rebel rousers, who are protesting over something that they feel has got nothing to do with the UK and has got all to do with America, and they don't quite make that association. If you haven't seen my previous videos about the number of police brutalities in the UK, please do have a look at it. But let's get back to Madeleine Mccann, missing person. If you put in missing person in your Google search, Madeleine Mccann is the first person to come up. Now, why is that when there is over 112,853 children that go missing in the UK every year? That's the estimated, and according to International Business Times, that is underreported. Get that figure into your head. A year, 112,853, and yet they choose to focus on one child that disappeared 13 years ago. You have to ask your question, why is that? Why do they keep bringing her up? And notice when she does appear, there's always some kind of controversy going on, always some kind of social issue. And when there's a social issue, up pops Madeleine Mccann on our television screens. So it's very strategic. When the media draws our attention in or tries to galvanize our interest, it's deliberate. It's not a mistake. It's not like something that they just think, oh, we've got a bit of news here, let's put that out. I mean, news is meant to inform, is meant to educate, it's meant to be sharing information. We're supposed to have the facts. It's supposed to be interesting. That is what news is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about isolated incidents that you choose to feed us with. But that is what has happened. That is what this has become. 12-year-old patient Nuentha. She went missing on the 4th of June. That's a couple of days ago. Have we seen any media coverage? No, because she's an African. No media coverage at all. From what I've seen, I haven't seen anything on the TV. I mean, yes, if you look at the local newspaper, it highlights that she's missing. Patience is one of the many whose disappearance have been swept under the carpet, while Madeleine Mccann's disappearance continues to monopolise the news 13 years after her disappearance. I'd like to know what's happening to all these children, 112,000. Why isn't there some kind of uproar? I mean, I don't understand. Can you imagine the parents of those children not knowing whether their child is going to come back, afraid to leave because they're not sure if their child is going to come back home, doesn't know if that child is alive or dead, constantly imagining what that child is going to look like year after year after year, what they would have looked like, what they would have been wearing, what their identity would be like. Constantly trying to use her imagination, afraid to leave in case she comes home or he comes home, afraid to commit suicide or die just in case, as they do so, that child comes home. So they're in continuous torment. And yet all of these missing children, they just they disappear. They should call it disappearing children. And I don't understand why there isn't more media coverage unless, they have some conspiracy theories. They have conspiracy theories that these children are being used as human sacrifice. And then you have another set of theories that say they're being used for their organs, they're sexually exploited, they're victims of human trafficking. I think they're being pulled into gangs, they're being made to work, there's child brides. I mean, but if that is true and you're dealing with UK British children, why isn't more coverage given to it? I mean, normally when somebody who's British goes missing, they pull out all the stops. And I don't know if it's because, I'm not saying the majority, because the missing children covers the gamut, black, white, Asian, Oriental, the gamut. But you would think that just like Madeleine Mccann, at least even the white British should get exposure. But is it because they come from a certain class? Is it because they're deemed undesirable why they don't get the exposure? What is it about Madeleine Mccann that made her special? What is it about Baby P that, despite over 46,000, I think it is, neglect cases and abuse and death of children, why is it that Baby P is the only one picked out to go into the training modules when there are so many other children who die in similar ways? What is that decisive factor that chooses one piece of news over the other, that qualifies one person to be more important than another, or one piece of information to be deemed more superior than another piece of information? How do they prioritize? And why does the whole of the media do the same thing? The only people that seem to be doing some fair reporting and getting this in is international news, like International Business Times, like RT News, sometimes CNN, but they don't really cover UK news in the same way, and sometimes The Guardian and The Independent, sometimes. But we have to ask ourselves, why are all those lovely, beautiful children who have gone missing, their legacy is not being honoured by fair reporting? According to Global Missing Kids, as of 2015, reports of missing children registry or reporting databases show that in Australia, an estimated 20,000 children go missing. In Canada, it's estimated that 45,288 go missing. In Germany, it's estimated that 100,000 go missing. In India, it's 96,000. In Jamaica, it's 1,984. In Russia, it's 45,000. In Spain, it's 20,000. And like I said, in the UK, the estimate is 112,853. And in America, it's 460,000 a year. I don't know if these are the only countries that report missing children, or whether there are other countries, but they haven't got the reports on them. But these were the only companies named in the article by International Business Times. And IBT Times believes that these numbers are underreported because a lot of these cases are deleted once the case is closed. Not once the case is solved, once the case is closed. So if they deem that, okay, after they're going to keep it open for like a year or two, and then they're going to close the case, those numbers aren't factored in. So, so many children are missing. Why is it not important to get to the bottom of it? And why is Madeleine McCann's disappearance being treated as though she was one of those who was not meant to go missing? Timothy Adeoye, he was 14 years old. These children I'm going to mention now have all gone missing. I haven't seen anything on the news, on the TV, or anything like that about them. So Timothy Adeoye, he was 14 years old. These are black people who have gone missing. Demario Williams, 17 years old. Robert Donaldson, 17 years old. Saria Omar, 13 years old. Elizabeth Ogunbayibi, 5 years old. She was taken from Manchester. Amina Khan, she was 6 years old, taken from Croydon. Sean Iregi, 7 years old. Hayden Nastaran, he was 7 years old. Moses John, 13 years old. Shahil Tariq, 15 years old. Precious Miles, 15 years old. And I just pick up those names, not because they're more important than anybody else's, but, there's just so many names. How many names do you know to include? So my heart and my condolences goes out to all of those parents. And if, no disrespect that I haven't mentioned your child's name, but it's just that there are, you can imagine 112,000. Can you imagine if I tried to name everyone? You might say, okay, if you couldn't name everyone, why name anyone? But it's to bring, when you name names, it gives it a sense of realness. You know you're dealing with facts. You know that people can go away and look at these people and see what's happened to them, see if they've been since found, or see if they're still missing, or see if anything has been followed up. That is the reason. So Hugh Thiele, Suleiman Dejalo, Heladen Kabede, Anna Hoang, and Henry Oladimiji, they all went missing from their homes, and we haven't heard a word. You are unlikely to have heard of any of these names I've mentioned above, and unlikely to have seen a photograph of their faces. If you Google search missing children, Madeleine McCann is the name that pops up in the search. But I am going to put the link for International Business Times so you can get some more information. And that was the inspiration behind this as well. Plus the fact that Madeleine McCann has now taken over the focus from the riots and the protesting. On the 9th of December 2017, the Metro reported at least 9 children between 13 and 17 went missing from the Enfield area. The missing teenagers were predominantly black boys. So where are they? Who's taking them? What are they taking them for? What are they doing to them? When I think about children as a woman, my heart. When I hear a newborn baby cry, I actually feel it in my throat, in my stomach. And when I see children or think about children and their vulnerability, And the fact that they look on adults for protection and safeguarding. And then to think that all of these children have been taken away and nobody knows where they are. And nobody is reporting on it. And parents can't do this on their own. They wouldn't even know where to start. And yet you have the media focusing on one child, using all of that money to focus on one child when there are so many. I appreciate they couldn't put all the focus on all of these children, but put Madeleine McCann along with the 112 others. Put her amongst them. Let people see just how many there are who have gone missing. Not just her. That's what you call fair reporting. Put baby P with all the others that have been abused and who've been killed at the hands of those who were meant to protect them. So people can see how big this is. When you just show one face, people think it's just us, it's just Madeleine McCann or maybe a couple of others. They wouldn't imagine that there's over 112,000 children in the UK alone who have gone missing. And why? Because it's not being reported on. Why isn't it not being reported on? I don't understand that. Can you imagine how those parents must feel every time they see Madeleine McCann on his face on the TV screens and they've lost their child? And they're thinking, how come she gets all the attention? What about my child? Why aren't they talking about my child? Like I said, the function of the news is to help inform people of what is going on around them in the world. The news is sometimes used to explain situations, get public opinion, educate and entertain. However, when the news reports with bias or strategically selects images and information to paint a picture that feeds their narrative, it can mislead those who expect the news to produce facts. News is becoming more sensationalized to make it more interesting, and because of the desire to make news interesting, it exaggerates the facts and focuses on incidents they believe the public is interested in, leaving out incidents they feel the public may have no interest in, like missing children, particularly missing children of colour. I will close with this statement from International Business Times. It is a simple fact that the press are 4 times more likely to report on missing white children than children of colour. Just as we have ingrained in us this representation of purity and what it looks like, we have come to believe that lack of innocence has its own face. Just as white individuals are presented staggeringly as victims or saviours in news, stories, films and television shows, it is people of colour who are overrepresented as criminals. It is even harder then to flip the narrative, to elicit the same kind of engagement from their disappearance or deaths. When we have been taught to view blackness and brownness as threatening, it is no surprise then that it is harder to identify with such individuals as lacking safety and ultimately innocent. As such, there is an immense absence in highlighting missing or victimised children of colour in our press. There is little or no coverage and lack of communal empathy. There are currently thousands of vulnerable children in Britain paying the price for a system out of their control, paying the price for a media which perhaps wrongly doesn't trust that we are capable of crying for and investing in all children in the same way as we have understandably afforded the tragedy of the McCanns. And that sums it up. There's no way I could have eloquently put that. And that's all for now. I just hope it gives you food for thought. Bye-bye.